Ricky Mathews, brother in broadcast, host of Coast Vue, the most popular, number one all across the southern part of the state, and where it's on TV everywhere. It's in the air. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Paul. How are you doing?
How was that, a $3 entrance there for you, intro for you?
That was terrific.
This completed conversation with Ken Newberger, Executive Director of Mississippi Medical's Marijuana Association. One of the feedbacks on C Spire text line: if inhaling is determined to be the most efficient form of medical marijuana way for a patient to get it, why could they not be prescribed the nebulizer form instead of smoking it? There's so many questions out there. I don't know. But before we march into everything else that we need to talk about, what's your thought on the Supreme Court's decision?
Well, as you know, as we discussed by text the moment the ruling was released, and we had a chance to at least do a quick read on it. I mean, they passed it on the merits. People want to read between the lines and say that it was an anti-marijuana ruling because of the conservative Supreme Court and all that. But at the end of the day, the legislature had a long time to fix the process, and they didn't. And so here we are.
You mean the process, the initiative process itself, which you're right,
Yes.
Ricky, that's what
Yes.
they ruled on. They didn't rule on the marijuana itself. It was the merits of the initiative process, and people don't want to see that because the ones who are disappointed in it, but that's exactly what they did, and I think they explicitly pointed that out in the language that came out after that.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And, you know, it's a mess. And as you pointed out so well, that the number of lawsuits and attorneys are going to make a lot of money off of this mess. Mm-hmm. But I think the legislature and our leadership in our state would be wise to get moving and fix this situation. It probably is going to be fixed in a number of stages, starting with hopefully medical marijuana. But you know, they've got a tiger by the tail now, and they've got to fix it.
Do you think, or have you heard, is there any appetite for a special session dealing with medical marijuana and or the initiative process?
You know, I think the people that I talk to, the legislators that I talk to, sort of expect a special session of some sort, but that would probably be just around medical marijuana, and then something else would happen, you know, the next legislative session as it relates to the initiative process. But that's essentially the you know, if you were to take a vote, that's what you're hearing as well, right?
Yeah, I do, and there's this other thing hanging out there, but it depends on Washington and how to spend all of this money, and can that be done in the 2021, or is some of it needed to be a little more proactive and done that before? But I think even if you're talking about that, it's probably after vacation when most of the legislators have taken their vacation. We're talking about the fall of the year. I don't know. You never know what's going on in the minds of the governor or anybody else. So when we least expect it, we may get the call for a special session.
Paul, what makes it always a little bit more complicated here in Mississippi is because it's, you know, while you and I are talking a lot about what's the practical steps that need to be made in order to fix this, there's this political calculus that's happening, and we don't know what their experts are telling them, or at least their political advisors are telling them. Yeah. And we'll be surprised. I bet we'll be surprised by their answers.
Listen, you're a hunter. You understand deer act differently during the rut season. Politicians act differently when they are ready to announce, or they are thinking about announcing for the next office. So just keep that in mind, because a lot of what goes on into decisions is political hormones. We'll leave it at that. But you understand what I'm saying.
100%.
And I'll tell you, in this group that we have now, being all Republicans, I think that's probably more tantamount than it's been in a long time. It's just the way it
You know,
feels.
the big three in particular, it's, you know, they all have their specific aspirations, and it is impacting most of what they do as leaders.
Yeah.
And that's frustrating, actually, to be honest with you, because they've got
It is
this
frustrating.
opportunity to do amazing things, but they can't communicate with one another.
Let's talk about BP. Where does that stand? Speaking of trying to get along and get everything taken care of, what is the standing as far as the BP money?
So let me, you know, we're now through essentially the second tranche of money that's come out. As you remember, the BP settlement money came. We were able to get legislation to have 75% of it brought back to the coast. A coast restoration advisory committee was established, and the goal is to have the money spent transformatively. And we've got about 15 more years to go, about $30 million a year, about $450 million total to distribute. You know, I think they're slowly making progress, but there's so much disagreement on what transformation really looks like. What is a transformational project? And, you know, the experts that I talk to tell me that when people come to them to say, well, you know, what can you do to help me get my project seen and heard after it's been scored by the advisory committee, they say, best I can tell you is get a lobbyist. That's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that we have an advisory committee that's scoring some of the projects, and I'll come back and say why that's important. That all the projects should be scored by the advisory committee, but and then what happens then is all these projects go to the legislature, and there's this political feeding frenzy, and the outcome's not going to be ultimately good for the state. It's not going to be good for coastal Mississippi if we don't invest in the kind of projects that are going to pay back for many years to come. We got a real opportunity here. We haven't, believe me, we haven't blown it. We're early in the process.
Yeah.
But I have some real strong advice for the big three if they really want to do this the best possible way.
Do you feel that, you know, I just saw something a few moments ago as far as New York is now reopening New York. You feel like the same thing as far as the Mississippi Gulf Coast and things happening there now?
And just in terms of how things are going, period?
In terms of post-pandemic, and I know we're a little early to say that, but things are back to normal. Maybe things like cruising the coast will come back on with some normalcy. Do you get that feel there going into summertime?
100%. What I say often is that I call it the post-vaccine period, because obviously we're not post-pandemic yet, but post-vaccine. You know, Dr. Nicholas Conger, who I have on my show all the time, he's a infectious disease doctor from Memorial, and he says it really well. By now, people have either gotten the vaccine or going to get it soon, or chosen not to get it, and they've made their choice. Right, of course, I've had it for sure. And but the reality is, you see a pep in people's step. You see, you know, restaurants are starting to have tremendous success. The casinos are having unbelievable success. Man, we're really poised for an amazing summer here in coastal Mississippi.
On that topic, I find myself in a weird position here because I've always been a guy who's promoted the vaccines, whether it's flu or, you know, for kids before they go to school and things. And I understand that's a tough subject that usually elicits a lot of comment on social media, Twitter, C Spire text line, whenever we talk about vaccines from that vaccine crowd. But you got a second to stick with me here? Because I want to play something coming out in the next one from a noted doctor talking about the vaccines and should young children get it. And that's going to be an interesting topic as we move forward. We'll have that opening bumper coming in and return with
99.997% survivability from the COVID. 99.997%. Let me repeat that for you all to understand. And there's evidence that these children are actually a buffer. What that means is that these children actually, for some reason, do not spread the disease. Children are not super spreaders. So what we're doing to our kids right now is actually criminal. We are isolating them. We are putting them in masks, which is also clinically dangerous. We are also psychologically telling them that if they bring COVID home, they're going to kill grandma, granddad, aunt, uncle, mom, and dad. That is a horrible situation to put on our kids.
It's funny how it's the little things in life that that mean most? Not where you live, what you drive, or the price tag.
That was
on your
Dr.
clothes.
Angelina Ferrella addressing the Texas Senate Communications, or Committee rather, on vaccine concerns. Back with our brother in broadcast, the one and only Ricky Mathews from Coast Vue. When you start looking at that, though, Ricky, 99.997 of these kids don't get it and are kind of a buffer. Then you introduce something, and I understand the flu vaccine and things such as that, but that's a different story altogether. The COVID-19 vaccine hasn't been tested on real young people. Then you start looking at that, and for the first time I feel myself, in thinking about my grandkids, the youngest, would I suggest they have that vaccine? And I don't want to be in the anti-vaccine category. Never thought I would be there, but I do have some hesitancy on that.
I don't blame you. It's funny, you know, Anna, my wife Ann, and I, we have 4 grandkids, and one is in sort of a mama's day out daycare scenario, and the other 2 are in Catholic school here in coastal Mississippi, and they're young. One is, you know, pre-kindergarten, one's in kindergarten, and my daughter actually is a 6th grade teacher at St. James Elementary. So, you know, they've you know, since they had this opportunity, they've been back in school and blowing and going, and we're torn too. I mean, it seems to me that the science, it seems to lean in the direction that clip you just played is moving, which is that kids don't get it and they're asymptomatic. They may not spread it big time, and so why should they get it? I think what's important is maybe those of us around the kids need to make sure we have the vaccine. But
I think so.
I'm not we're not in any rush to get them vaccinated, to be quite honest.
That's the way I feel about this. And the other part of that is, if they do get it, apparently it could be asymptomatic or very, you know, a quick cold or something. And is the problems with the vaccine itself have more uncertainty than what happens to them. Now, if they come up and say, even if you get it and you don't even know you have it or you had mild symptoms, it may be injurious to your lungs, you know, for a period of many years or a lifetime, then I can understand that. But that's still not been proven out.
No, I do. I think it's something, you know, I was watching Good Morning America the other day, and they seem to be pushing hard on this point. Why shouldn't kids be getting vaccinated? I mean, really pushing hard on it. And even the staunchest everyone needs to get vaccinated people were somewhat hesitant answering this whole question about requirement. I think everybody's torn on this one. I think the jury sort of leans toward where you and I are. Let's just be a little bit more careful about what we do with our kids.
4th congressional district race is going to be an interesting one. Any updates there from ground zero?
Well, you've heard all the names. You know, you've got the current sheriff of Jackson County, Bryce Wiggins, is talking about it. You've had one or two border supervisors from Harrison County talking about it. And a really interesting name, somebody I've known for a long time, Clay Wagner, who just recently retired from Hancock Whitney. His family, his uncle is Leo Seal, was Leo Seal. His grandfather made the bank what it is today, been involved in the bank his whole career. He's actually currently a commissioner for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, but he's leaning toward it. He has, not made a determination yet. But boy, if he runs, that could be a real game changer, because, as you know, Stephen Palazzo is at the very least damaged. And there's a lot of questions about whether or not he's going to be able to run or whether he's going to run. I mean, all indications are he's going to run, but I don't know that you're going to see a lot of Republican money lining up behind him because of the ethics report and what it had to say, et cetera.
So we're talking about maybe 3 or 4, or at the outside 5 people running against him to be primaried.
Yeah. And Clay's an interesting name because he's been involved in doing legislative liaison work for Hancock Whitney in Louisiana and Mississippi for many years, and in Washington. So he understands the legislative process. He comes from, I knew his mother very well. She was very conservative, very much a Republican. And when I was president and publisher of the Sun Herald, I used to hear from her almost daily. So it'll be interesting. It's going to be very interesting to see, what
is that qualification deadline. Is that March 1st on the qualification deadline?
You caught me on I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't know. Yeah.
When are the dates for the cruising the coast? I was trying to figure out what I was going to tell you. The cruising the coast.
It's in October every year.
That's in October. Have they been mentioned? All of that's in the stone now. We're ready for it.
Oh yeah, man. It's a year-round planning effort, and I bet my let me just go ahead and tell you now. I estimate it will be a record turnout. It's going to be unbelievable.
I think so.
Unbelievable.
I think so. While I got you on, how are the Shuckers doing? People want to get back, and we have some pretty good crowds at the Braves, and I understand that they're breaking some of the crowd records early on as far as the AAA team in Memphis, the Cards. So how are they doing as far as the Shuckers are concerned?
I'm not following them too closely, but I have a lot of friends that are big Shuckers fans. And as you know, Kyle Curley, who is the producer of Coast Vue, is doing the music and working there with the Shuckers. Boy, people are posting enthusiastic posts, and from the pictures they're taking, it looks like they're having good attendance and all of that. So it's exciting to see life come back to coastal Mississippi. Not that it ever left. I mean, we found our way to move life forward,
It's been a long time since we've been there. I think the last time we were there is to open up the thing for the aquarium, which is a wonderful facility, and I'm sure they're going to have a busy and record-breaking year at the aquarium. But have you been back since we were there?
No, but actually my son and his family went this past weekend, and there's been great attendance, and I've had representatives from the aquarium on. They're thrilled with the numbers that they're seeing, and look forward to being able to open up all the way. That's kind of their big plan now, for sure.
Thank you for keeping us abreast of what is going on. Who's the guest today, by the way?
Well, I have Nigel Farage as well.
Very good.
We'll be talking more about what's going on next week, and Fofo Gillage, and so it ought to be a great show.
Nigel is
Paul,
good just to hear his voice. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you give me 1 minute to circle back on the BP money for 1 second?
Sure.
Yeah, one of the things that I think we need to do, I mentioned when we were talking that the projects are able to go around the local advisory committee. And if I were the lieutenant governor, the governor, and the Speaker of the House, they're the ones who appointed to this committee. And incidentally, it's a dream team. You've got people like Jerry Levins, who's the chairman of the board for Hancock Whitney, and Mark Cumbus, and Ashley Edwards, and Becky Montgomery. It's a dream team. I would say if you really want to improve the process, I don't care if you decide not to take the committee's advice, but make all projects go through that committee so that it can all get scored. And create alignment with that committee around the scoring is based on transformations about multi-year payback, and don't enable any projects to go around that committee. If you really want to improve the process, if you really want transformation, get tightly connected. The big three should get tightly connected with that committee and make all projects pass through that committee.
I think you and I and a lot of other people in the state get frustrated as far as the voice of the people being heard on a lot of these different things, Ricky, especially as far as the influence of the lobbyists. We know that. I was thinking the same thing this morning when we were talking to Ken Newberger, Executive Director of Mississippi Medical Association, that they put this organization together. There's some well-founded people who are members of this. They have a lucrative industry that they want to be a player to, and somehow from there, that money finds its way in the campaign kitties of the state legislatures, and it is just frustrating as hell. The one thing that if you and I had a magic wand, we would stop all of that, but it's almost impossible.
And here's the Paul. What happens is we get so insular in our thinking, and everything's political, and that's what's making our decisions. But I had Joe Max Higgins from the Golden Triangle Economic Development Group, and we talked about the perception on the outside, people who on the outside of Mississippi looking in, what do they see? And too often they see something that's different than what we experience here. I wish our leaders would get aligned around that message and really push harder to change the perception of Mississippi. Too often some of their actions only confirm what people on the outside believe, and it's unfortunate that we find ourselves in that situation.
I was texting yesterday with a former member of the state legislature, and I think we were both exasperated with the number one thing, knowing that we're all Republicans in here as far as in control, as far as the House, the Senate, and the governor's office, was the plea for these people to finally get together and not go another legislative session trying to post markers one way or the other. But maybe that will happen. It is. Ricky, it's always good talking to you, sir. Appreciate you, and thank you for spending the time with us.
You bet,
We'll
buddy. Have a great day.
You got it.